We decided to look at the experiment done by Yin, Knowlton, and Bailey. Their study looked at the role of the dorsolateral striatum on habit formation.
We have already discussed throughout this course that extended training and interval training weakens the contingency between response and outcome delivery. These findings were supported through Baum and Dickinson studies. Through Dickinson studies, results have shown that goal-directed and habitual instrumental actions are controlled by distinct learning processes. Goal-directed responses are associated with RO, or response outcome learning, while habitual is associated with SR, or stimulus response learning.
It was known that procedural memory was dependent on the functionality of the dorsal striatum, but these researchers wanted to know if this was dependent on the specific region of the dorsal striatum or the region as a whole. They sought out to assess the role of the dorsolateral striatum on habit formation.
In the experiment, the researchers took 39 male rats of similar weight who had never gone through testing before. The rats were divided into two groups, one given surgery to a lesion of the DLS and the other given a sham surgery. 1 week after surgery, the rats were food deprived. These rats were given 30-minute training sessions with the sucrose solution and no lever. These multiple exposures of sugar while in a hungry motivational state were necessary to teach the rats that sugar is a good thing when hungry.
All experimental training sessions began with the illumination of a house light and the insertion of the lever into the experimental cage. When the illumination turned off, the lever was removed. This aspect of the experimental design was important to create contextual cues for the rats. In the first replication, 21 rats were divided into groups of 10 lesioned and 11 sham, and they were trained to lever press for sucrose on a continuous reinforcement schedule. In continuous reinforcement schedules, every behavior is being reinforced, so it is difficult to develop the relationship between the lever press and the sucrose.
The second replication included 18 rats, 8 of which were lesioned on their dorsolateral striatum, and 10 underwent sham surgeries. All rats were then trained on a fixed interval 20 schedule. Fixed interval schedules tend to create habits. Both replications were next trained on random interval 30 and random interval 60 schedules to lever press for sucrose.
Right when I start recording, camera shy.
After training was concluded, the reward of sucrose was devalued using conditioned taste aversion for 12 lesioned rats and 11 sham rats. These rats were given an injection of lithium chloride immediately following sucrose ingestion. The other rats were given saline injections, meaning half were devalued and the other used as a control.
The day after final training, all rats received a 5-minute extinction test on the levers. The house light was turned on and the lever was inserted into the testing cage. The rats received no rewards for lever pressing. Extinction was necessary to test if devaluation occurred.
Through this experiment, it was learned that taste aversion is not affected by lesions to the dorsolateral striatum. The main finding in respect to the dorsolateral striatum was that lesions to the dorsolateral striatum inhibited habit formation. This is displayed in these graphs. The first graph portrays the amount of responses when sugar is still a positive reward. Both lesion and sham groups respond equally. The next graph portrays rats responding to the lever press after half of the rats are devalued. This shows that those rats who have been lesioned and devalued have a significantly smaller response rate in comparison to their counterparts. The sham group still has their dorsolateral striatum intact, which means despite devaluation, they continue equal response rates since they have developed a habit. When the habit system, or dorsolateral striatum in this case, is disrupted, control over instrumental performance reverts back to goal-directed instrumental actions. This is why lesioned rats in the devaluation group stop lever pressing because they know lever pressing will bring sugar, which is bad.
The implication of this study is that Yin, Knowlton, and Baleen were able to determine the habit formation system specifically resides in the dorsolateral striatum. This is important because no other study has directly demonstrated this specific region to cause habit formation, but only inferred the region as a whole. The results of this study prove and further support previous theoretical claims of the role of the dorsolateral striatum.
Here's an example of a real-life situation that could theoretically display the impact of damage to the dorsolateral striatum. Kelly has been a lacrosse goalie for 11 years. Through these years of practice, she has formed habits which make the act of saving a ball come naturally. This improves her performance because it allows her to focus on the other stimuli on the field instead of focusing on the way she holds her stick and moves her feet. Unfortunately, Kelly received a lacrosse injury that damaged her dorsolateral striatum. Now that she has received damage to her DLS, she has lost her ability to perform the habits that she developed over the years. She has to reteach herself the basics that once came to her so naturally. The results from this experiment show that SR and RO processes can function independently to control instrumental actions. Also, the results show that RO systems can control other behaviors that are usually mediated by SR systems. When the dorsolateral striatum was lesioned, learning processes reverted back to RO. To ensure that it was just the dorsolateral striatum that was causing habit formation and not the dorsal striatum as a whole, Yin, Knowlton, and Baleen conducted another experiment. In the second experiment, the researchers replicated experiment 1 and added a third group with lesions to the dorsal medial striatum. The results in the sham and the dorsolateral groups in experiment 1 were replicated. It was found that only the dorsolateral striatum was required for habit learning. Rats with lesions of the dorsal medial striatum responded habitually. Both the sham group and the DMS group were insensitive to outcome devaluation, which is apparent in the second graph.
Beef Wellington?
No, your name.
The fork on the left?
Stop joking. Tell him your name.
My name? What's his name? What's his name? I got nothing on the name. Come on, baby, what's the name?